I constructed the piece. You're welcome to ask me questions while I'm doing that. Then I'm going to play the piece. No talking during the playing. And then after that, if we have a dedicated question and answer period. Okay, so since I was a little child, since I was 9 years old, you asked me, I wanted to be a composer. And I took organ lessons. My primary instrument is the pipe organ. And when I was 45 years old, my wife didn't know what to get me for Christmas or birthday. I think it was Christmas, so she bought me a gong. And it was a
good choice.
Yeah, it was a Javanese Kempel, about 17 inches, black with a gold boss. And I fell in love with it. And I said, oh my gosh, you know what would go good with this one? You know what's happening, right? There's a Vietnamese gong that would go good with this one. And then, you know what would go good with these two? So before you knew it, I had a whole collection, which I called the Bronze Collection. And it now, the original version of the Bronze Collection is on the album up there, the album art. You see it, it's about maybe 35, 40 pieces. Now it's almost 100 pieces. And it's all arranged in like a U shape. So I can play gongs overhead, gongs at chest level, and gongs at knee level. And for some of those, I have like a bass drum kick pedal to play those, because I have all four limbs going sometimes. So I don't know how many of you know about my background. I don't want to go too much into it, but I did these two very large public art projects one was called Bridge Music, one was called Tower Music. One was done on the Mid-Hudson Bridge in New York, and Tower Music was done on the Eiffel Tower. So I went and I sampled all the surfaces, the handrails, the guardrails, the cables, everything. And I took those sounds, and I was informed as a percussion player by this time. So I got my first gong when I was 45. I was doing this like maybe 15 years later. And I took lessons on how to hold sticks and stuff, because at 45 I was a mature musician. My musicianship was there, but I didn't really know how to handle sticks. So I took lessons from two different drum teachers at the same time. One guy was on a Tuesday, one guy was on a Thursday. So I would get two different perspectives and sort of up my game as quickly as possible. So after I finished these two big projects, COVID hits. And you can't even go out anymore. So I said, well, let me work on the Bronze Collection. But I wanted to do something differently. And I thought, instead of doing another opus, I have two 40-minute suites. I said, let me just go real, real small and choose one gong. Mm-hmm. And of course, I chose the biggest one, but one gong. What kind of music can I make out of that? And the first thing that got me going, I thought, well, let me do something that's quiet, so because everybody's in the house, and I don't want to bother everybody. And I said, what if I take my friction mallets, and they kind of almost have like a spirit when you drag them, and you can't always tell what they're going to do. But I said, what if I could learn to control them and make it sound like they're talking to each other? So I had a high one and a low one, big one and a small one, and I tried, and I'm still working on it. Mm-hmm. But that was the genesis for this piece, and I Illumined by Another Sun. And so I got to the point where I liked where I was going with that. And I said, well, I want to write a larger piece. And I had a concert, actually, at the end of COVID. I got a call to do a concert in New Jersey. And they said, well, what do you have? And I said, well, I'm working on this piece for solo gong, which wasn't really all written yet. So I had to finish it. And I said, well, on one gong like this, there's a very limited number of notes, actual pitches you can get from it. And they're both very deep. You get it by completely muting the gong and getting a high pitch or a low pitch. All right, so you see The reason I'm sitting is so I can completely mute the gong. I have the front part of my calves, I don't know what they're called, anybody?
Shins.
Well, no, but not the shin bone, the meat of your calf that surrounds the shin. So from my knees down to my ankles, I have that meat touching. I also put my arm against the gong, which further mutes it. And the beginning of this piece, I have my hand up here, so it's completely closed off. But if I do this, you hear like a high pitch and a lower pitch. And they're not really defined. And that's just a way to show you that you can get different notes from a supposedly non-pitched instrument, but very limited. So I said, well, I'm going to have to do this with color, different colors, and take people on a journey with colors. So the form that I took is an ancient Hebrew, biblical Hebrew poetry that you find in the book of Psalms. And just like we have a haiku or a sonnet or a limerick, and they have a set way that they're constructed. Biblical Hebrew poetry has a system called parallelism, and it's based on 2 lines. And you could have a whole poem, and it's 2 lines, 2 lines, 2 lines. And of course, there's 150 Psalms. They're very varied, but parallelism very basically works. There's 3 kinds. There's synonymous parallelism, where you have 1 line, and the second line says almost the exact same thing. So you could say, God is great, God is great, God is great to me, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have antithetical, where you have 1 line and then something that contrasts. God is great, Satan is out to get me. And then you have synthetic, where you have 1 line and then it's built upon in the second line. So you can say, God is great, I'm blessed with many camels and donkeys, all right? So it builds on that, and that's the formal structure that I used. So for this piece, I said I'm going to do all the utterances in pairs, so that I'll play something and I'll either really repeat it or I will add to it. I don't think I really did any antithetical type of parallelism, and so you're going to hear those cadences repeat. You're going to hear sections within them repeat twice. And actually, I have a score. Frederick, can you hand me a score there?
Yes.
Yeah, the musical score. Yeah, look. If you're interested, everything over there is for sale. The albums are $50. The sheet music is $10. This is the piece that I'm going to play for you tonight. And it's written out in standard musical notation. Mm-hmm. It tells you what instruments, what mallets you need. And it's written out in notation, but it is, there's a lot of room for ad lib playing, all right? And if you want to look at this later, fine. I wouldn't say look at it while I'm playing, because it takes away from the thing. And if you don't read music, there's the whole score written out in English, directions, how to play it. And this is just a way of showing you that it's not, my music is not solely improvised. They are fixed compositions. Stuff I did on the bridge, stuff I did on the Eiffel Tower. Here, my large collection of gongs, they're fixed compositions, which means I can repeat them. And this is not to say that I'm against, free-form playing or an aesthetic where you're rhapsodizing and going from sound to sound. It's just saying that my music is this way. So, thank you, Frederick. Sorry. So, I wanted to start to, I had the idea of the two different, friction mallets talking to each other. You can't tell where one starts and the next one starts when they're like that, so I had to really mute the things. Right, so that you could hear each of these flumies, one's talking after the other. Same thing with the rhythms. I can do this. And if I hit harder a second time so that you can hear it, it just turns into a big wash. Nice. So you have to, in my case, completely mute it. All right? So, and that's why I'm seated. And so many of you have asked me about the rice over here. I didn't want to have like tables where you put a stick down and it might roll off. I needed to be able to reach for it and start playing and put it back. All right, so there's no guesswork. These are arranged the way I'm going to use them in the piece. And that's all part of the aesthetic as well. And this is going to come off probably, but it's okay. Okay, so the piece starts. I needed to announce the beginning of the piece. Gong is completely muted. Well, I don't start with that. You see the different ways I'm hitting it. You might get really dry, and you might get a little bit of a ring, right? So I'm kind of like manipulating my legs, pulling them back a little bit, or even my forearm. Now, if I push my wrist knuckle into it, it really kills the ring. So I start with this, like a heartbeat, and then you hear the type of sound you expect to hear from a gong. Now, I think in any art, they benefit from having a foreground, a middle ground, a background, not just a succession of ideas. There's contrast, high, low, fast, slow. So here, when we opened and we've got this heartbeat sound, I have to put something different in here. We have a very high, this is a wire. It's a hanger, no hanger. You get that high scratch sound against this low pitch. Right. And then, while that's still ringing, of course I'm talking now, I won't be talking when I play, I do a groan with the stick. I have all different sizes for different sounds. I have found that when I'm using these, I can sometimes, you can feel it in the stick, the kind of, I can't say that I can play you with something that's ringing in thirds or fifths or sixths, but when you're playing it, you can feel where something's happening, and if I feel it, I stop this. I don't take it away. Like that's what you might do. But if I hear like a chord happening, so if I hear it and I feel this thing start to talk to me, then I'll stop it here, and that'll bring out that chord. And that's part of the ad-lib element too. You're sort of seeing what the gong is doing. How fast is it coming towards you? Is it going away from you? By the time you pick up a stick, how much has the sound died away, right? So that opening gesture happens twice. And then I move from that first cadence into a second cadence. Okay, so that's the second cadence. And that second cadence is like a guide through this piece. I can't play a melody that your ear will be able to come back to, but I can play a rhythmic cadence that you'll be able to pick out and latch onto. I liken it to a guide taking you through a cave, or maybe you're in outer space, and like, you know, if you're in a cave, it's dark, and you're saying, oh my gosh, look, I never saw a stone like that, but you don't see the guide anymore, you know, and you want to continue the journey. So then you hear this cadence after the other stuff, and that pulls you back and takes you on to the next section of the piece. And we move from that, then we go to a dialogue with these, it says 2 wires in the store, but this is actually a flumie handle where the stick came off. And I sound like that, but much better when it's muted. Right? So I have a dialogue with these. And then to go between that and the next section, I have like this interstitial kind of a sound to get me to the next part, which is the dialogues with the friction mallets, which happen twice. And I go to a larger one for the second iteration of it. So you have a much lower sound. And I also use this technique with the thin friction mallets. You know, you're supposed to hold them in the middle, like the big ones you're supposed to hold near the top. That's the received wisdom, right? The little ones you're supposed to hold in the middle and let the stick vibrate. But if you hold them like this, and you shorten the speaking length up here, you can get higher pitches from it. Or, you start high and go low, you can go low. So you can get a lot of sounds from your friction mallets. And that helps me in that dialogue. When these 2 guys are talking, I'm actually imagining like a person in a small grocery store talking to a customer. And they're saying, well, how is it outside? Or how are you today? How are your children? I try to imagine that so I can make the rhythms between these 2 things natural. And this is getting me, I hope, closer to doing a piece where it's just these things talking to each other. Where, of course, you wouldn't hear words, but you might be able to follow the sense of a conversation. So after that, we have this again as an interstitial section. And I forgot one piece that I really need to tell you about. After I do that second cadence, I do it again, but with a prepared gong. Now, if you're really sensitive to loud sounds, when you see me reach for one of these, all right, just be careful, okay? So I put it here, and then I hit the ground quite loud, and then I put another one, and then I put one in the center. So like a prepared piano, it becomes a prepared gong. And then I do the rhythm again. And now, because the gong has those metallic things attached to it, it kind of sounds like a snare drum. Mm-hmm. And so we move away from that with these wire brushes. And then we go to the wires and the talkers. And like I said, this is in between those. And then this comes up and you say, oh, he's going to do this again. Something else is happening. But then you hear the second cadence with this. And each of the cadences end with a big bang. It's a little bit different with these. I'll let you hear it when it happens. After that, I go back. Now, we've gone pretty far in this journey where this guide is taking you different places, and you've heard wires, and you've heard flumies, and you've heard the mallets. So now I start bringing us back to the end. It's almost like an arch where you have the first you have the first cadence again. So I'm over here, I'm not using these now. I'm doing this. But I have one of these in my hand. So I kind of bring your mind back to when I had these S hooks attached up here, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not going to be loud, it's just going to be a reminder of it. Then I do another swoop with the friction mallets, go back to the first, go back to the second cadence, and then I end the piece with both. You've just heard a big in there. We've got this deep sound. I want something high, something else high, but completely different quality. So you have these two different qualities of, like maybe a soprano and an alto and a bass, and now all three sounds are combined. I don't know if I said it, but I really like the idea of having different sounds combined instead of just being a succession of one after the other. So, are there any questions before I start playing? Understand this all?
Well explained.